Hi, I'm attorney Renee Osipov with Chelle Law, and we assist parents, guardians, and students who are having issues surrounding 504 plan accommodations. So in this video, I'm discussing what does a 504 plan look like in North Carolina. And the simple answer is that it looks the same actually in all 50 states because 504 plan accommodations are actually federally mandated and they're codified in federal statutes, specifically the Rehabilitation Act, Section 504. So that's where the name of the plan comes from. In this federal law, it specifies that any student who has a mental or physical impairment that substantially limits a major life activity, they are to be provided accommodations within the educational setting to protect them from discrimination due to their disability. So I kind of just threw a lot out there, but let's kind of walk through that. So 504 plans, in order to qualify, a student has to have a diagnosis. So this is where you want to start when you are going through the process of a 504 plan. Now this can happen with a therapist, a primary care provider, pediatrician, or maybe a specialized physician. So first, the parent or guardian needs to take their child to get this diagnosis. Now, after this happens, or you may be already aware of the diagnosis, then it needs to be looked at in relation to the activities and processes throughout the school day and environment and see if there are any substantial impairments. The thing that you want to remember with 504 plans is that they cover everything throughout the school day. So this isn't just the general education teacher giving instruction. This could be cafeteria, specials classes with physical education or music. It could be transitions, even in the hallway, going from one class to another, bathrooms, buses, really anything throughout the day that would substantially limit that student's major life activities. So we've kind of went through and discussed who would qualify. So they have to have that physical or mental impairment. It has to substantially impact some part or impair them throughout the school day, not just with instruction, anywhere within that environment. And so if you feel like that's the case, then what would happen is that you would formally request in writing that the school evaluate this student for a 504 plan accommodation. So their evaluation team would meet, they would look at the diagnosis, and then they would also look at the data throughout the school. So this might be observations from educators or staff or administration or counselors in the school setting, and they would see, yes, there's definitely a substantial impairment. So therefore, we are going to draft a 504 plan in order to protect this student from discrimination because of their disability. At this point, then they're going to go ahead and decide on what accommodations are needed. So an important thing to remember about a 504 plan that's different from an IEP. Sometimes those get confused with each other and they do overlap occasionally, but an IEP specifically deals with special education and a 504 plan does not. So if a child needs to be taken out for specialized instruction at a different level than what's being presented to their peers, then an IEP and those accommodations would actually be better. A 504 means that they're able to learn at this level, but they just need accommodations. So we can talk about that. And again, I always point out to parents and guardians, you want to really get to the root of what's causing the impairment. So for example, anxiety could be a mental impairment that substantially limits the child's ability to complete an exam. But it's important whenever you're drafting those accommodations to know exactly what the anxiety is caused from. Is it reading the exam? Is it the length of the exam? Is it being in the room with their peers? Are they overstimulated because of things in the room? So once you find the root of that, Then you can write the accommodation. So what would that look like? You would want to be specific. You would say something like the child would receive double or triple the time that their peers would to complete the exam or assignment. If they need to be in a quiet area, they could be given a different location that they could go to in order to complete their exam. So those are just some straightforward examples of accommodations for exams within the education classroom. Now, let's say a child has a physical impairment. Potentially they could be in a wheelchair. So they would need accommodations to make sure that there's a clear path for them to enter and exit the room. Maybe they have to have an aide sitting with them. So they would need an accommodation so that they were able to have an aide literally sitting next to them. This is one thing that I have seen from parents in dealing with clients in the past. It's important to note in the accommodation that the aide needs to be near the student. That way, the aide, sometimes it will say needs to be in the classroom, but in the classroom could mean a lot of different things. They could be helping the teacher, they could be helping other students, and if their purpose is really to be giving one-on-one assistance to the child with the accommodations, then they need to be sitting near them or directly beside them. So also in accommodations, you want to think outside the classroom. So in transitions between classes, does a child need, maybe they have some sort of processing disorder or need prompts for transitions. So 5 minutes or 15 minutes before the class transitions, you need to give a prompt to that student so that they're aware of it. Or do they need a buddy system? So there could be a peer or it could be an aide that would walk them from class to class. All of those things would be appropriate. The biggest area that I think is forgotten on 504 plan accommodations is the cafeteria, especially with someone who can be overstimulated. You have to remember that cafeterias are extremely smelly from the food. They are loud. There's lots of students and staff and a lot of moving things. And so a lot of students can be extremely overstimulated, which can lead to behavioral problems, which you want to protect your child from. So accommodations could be that they were able to eat the lunch maybe before everybody, or they were allowed to eat it in a different area, or staff would be near them in case they needed to, they felt uncomfortable and needed to remove themselves from that environment. So again, a 504 plan really helps a student throughout the entire school day. This is not just taking exams. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. And the other thing is that 504 plans are just suggestions, and that is completely false. They are, you can think of it like a contract that's mandated by federal law that the school must comply with. So you can hold the school accountable. 504 plans are enforced through the Office of Civil Rights, which is a federal administrative agency, which you can actually file a complaint against the school if they're not complying with the 504 plan. So again, as you can see, 504 plans are federally mandated, so they're not going to change from state to state. So if you're in North Carolina, they are going to have the same requirements as any of the other 50 states. The thing to remember is that states can sometimes potentially have additional requirements for accommodations. They can never change what the federal requirements are. 504 plans are great for students who are learning at the same level as their peers. They just need accommodations through specific parts of the environment or the way that they are completing their exams. But if you feel like the child is really academically not where they need to be for cognitive reasons, potentially they need special education services, they need to be pulled out for reading instruction, math, science, things like that, then they would maybe need more of an IEP. But if you have any more questions or you'd like more information or a consultation with myself, I'm an attorney and I deal with 504 plan accommodations every day. You can set up a consultation with us and we can walk you through the process or, give you your legal rights and the procedures around wherever you are in the process. And all of our contact information is in the description below this video.